to save her son. A kind lady worked hard every night with CEO. After got pregnant, she was spoiled by the CEO. The waiting room was too quiet for a place so full of urgency. The kind of silence that stretched long and tight, like something might snap if anyone breathed too loudly. Mia sat with her son's head nestled in her lap, his small face pale and peaceful in sleep, completely unaware of the storm unraveling around him. Before we move further, please ensure to like, share, and subscribe for heartwarming stories like this. Likewise, tell us where you are watching from in the comment below. She adjusted her grip on the clipboard in her hands, as if holding the paperwork tighter could somehow hold her world together. Her fingers were numb, but not from the cold. It was the kind of numbness that came after too many sleepless nights and too many no's. Her eyes, rimmed red from tears she no longer had time to shed, stayed fixed on the totals circled in blue ink. 20,000. The number didn't just stare back at her. It mocked her. A wall she couldn't climb. A door she didn't have the key to. The surgery Liam needed wasn't optional. The doctors had said so clearly. Delaying could cost him more than his health. Across the room, the nurse approached with hesitant steps. Her smile was practiced, her tone gentle, but Mia braced herself anyway. "I'm sorry, Ms. Alvarez," the nurse said quietly. "The billing department needs confirmation of payment before we can move forward. We've extended as much time as we could." Mia nodded slowly, as if she'd rehearsed this conversation in her mind 100 times. "Just a few more days. Please. I wish I could help," the nurse offered, lowering her voice. "We're doing all we can, but the deadline is tomorrow morning." The woman walked away before Mia could respond. What more could she say? Begging had lost its power. She looked down at Liam. His breathing was uneven, and the sound of it clawed at her ribs. The little boy who once ran through the park, unstoppable and free, now struggled to rest. Each breath sounded like it cost him something. Mia blinked hard. She couldn't fall apart. Not here. Not now. Her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. With shaking hands, she pulled it out, praying for a miracle. Some late deposit, a returned favor, anything. But the screen only showed missed calls, all ending in rejection. She opened her banking app. The balance blinked back, $47.13. She bit down on her lip until the taste of blood brought her back. No one was coming to save them. She dialed the last person on her list. Her voice cracked when they answered. "Please," she whispered. "Anything helps. Just for Liam." The line cut. Another no. Another door closed. And then a message came through. "Call me. I found something." It was Carla, her former coworker and friend. Mia called without hesitation. "It's not ideal," Carla said quickly. "It's a night job. Assistant work. High-pressure stuff. But it pays well." Mia's voice was hollow. "Where?" "Vance Corp." Her heart stuttered. She'd heard of them. Everyone had. The CEO was a cold-blooded perfectionist, the kind of man who replaced people as easily as printer paper. But none of that mattered. "How soon?" "Tonight. 10. Mia looked down at Liam. He stirred slightly, but didn't wake. She tucked a blanket around him and stood, legs unsteady beneath her. "I'll take it," she whispered. Carla hesitated. "You sure?" "No," Mia admitted. "But I don't have a choice." She ended the call. Her hands trembled, but her spine straightened. Some battles are loud. Others are fought in silence. Mia didn't wear armor, and she had no sword. But she had something else. Something stronger. A mother's will. She kissed Liam's forehead, the softest promise she could give, and turned toward the exit. Behind her, the nurse watched with quiet pity. But Mia didn't look back. Out in the hallway, the lights flickered once, then steadied. What she didn't know was this. Her life wasn't about to change. It was about to be rewritten. And just before she reached the hospital doors, her phone rang again. But this time, it wasn't Carla. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime that sounded far too cheerful for the hour. Mia stepped out slowly, clutching her handbag with both hands. The hallway was hushed, the kind of silence that whispered power. Tall glass walls framed every inch of the corridor, leading to a single dark door at the far end. His office. Her heels barely made a sound against the marble floors, but she felt each step in her chest. With every breath, doubt crept in. She didn't belong here. Not among the suits and sharp corners. Not in the orbit of a man like Ethan Vance. She had heard the stories. How he once fired a senior analyst over a misprinted comma. How assistants rotated through his floor like names on a dartboard. Vance Corp didn't run on forgiveness. It ran on fear and precision. And she was already running on fumes. But she knocked anyway. "Come in," said a voice. Low, detached, with the weight of someone who didn't repeat themselves. Mia stepped inside. The office was vast and cold, all glass and steel. Floor-to-ceiling windows opened to the city's skyline, glittering against the midnight sky. A massive desk sat near the center, papers arranged in meticulous stacks, a laptop open, the glow from the screen highlighting the man behind it. Ethan Vance didn't look up. He kept reading, pen in hand, flipping pages as though her arrival were no more interesting than a passing draft. Mia stood there, uncertain. "You're late," he said after a long silence, still without looking at her. "I was told 10, she replied, voice steady despite the tremble in her hands. He glanced at the clock, then finally looked at her. Briefly. His gaze was sharp, unreadable. Not cruel, just uninterested. "Coffee," he said. "Black. 2 sugars." That was the beginning. She found a break room, made the coffee, returned. He took it without thanks, pointed to a stack of files, and instructed her to alphabetize them. No explanación, no conversación, just quiet commands and endless tasks. She nodded and got to work. Hours passed. The city outside shifted from night to inkier night. Mia filed, sorted, answered emails, proofread documents. At 2:15 a.m., he handed her a marketing draft and asked for corrections by sunrise. She didn't leave until almost 5, and she came back the next night, and the next. Weeks passed like this. Long, silent nights where she existed as background noise in Ethan Vance's immaculate world. He rarely spoke more than a sentence. But he noticed things. The way her hands trembled when no one was watching. The way she rubbed her temples when she thought he wasn't looking. The quiet sniffle she suppressed in the break room at 2 a.m. when she thought no one was around. He said nothing, but he saw everything. Mia, for her part, never complained. She arrived on time. She worked hard. She learned quickly. When he gave impossible deadlines, she met them. When he was cold, she remained calm. She kept her pain wrapped tight behind quiet eyes and perfect grammar. But something had started to shift. It was subtle, like the way Ethan paused before dismissing her, or how he began asking if she'd eaten. Small questions, minor hesitations, as if part of him didn't want to know the answers, but couldn't stop himself from asking anyway. And then, one night, just after midnight, as she refilled his coffee, he spoke without looking at her. "You have a son, don't you?" Mia froze, cup in hand, fingers just barely trembling. "Yes," she said. Nothing more. He didn't respond, but his eyes lingered on the paperwork longer that night. He didn't dismiss her until 3, and when she packed her things, she found a protein bar tucked under her stapler. She never mentioned it. He never brought it up. But for the first time in weeks, when she left the office that night, she didn't feel invisible. And yet, as she stepped into the elevator, her phone buzzed once. A message from the hospital. "Liam's condition is worsening. We need an update by Friday." Her knees nearly gave way. She had 3 days, and no idea how far the silent job, and this silent man, might be willing to carry her. The hallway was too quiet for comfort. Past midnight, the entire Vance Corp floor was deserted, save for the hum of fluorescent lights and the dull clack of Mia's heels against polished tiles. She moved slower tonight. Her body had grown heavier with each passing hour, her limbs sluggish, her breath shallow. She'd skipped lunch, then dinner. Again, her hands trembled as she clutched a stack of revised reports. She just needed to get them back to Ethan's office. One more task. Just one more. The world tilted. Her knees buckled. The files scattered like feathers across the floor as she collapsed, the cool marble biting into her side. She heard a distant clatter. Her pen, maybe, or her balance giving way completely. Her eyes fluttered shut as darkness rushed in, thick and unforgiving. Somewhere a door opened fast. Heavy footsteps. Then his voice. Sharp, cutting through the haze. Mia. Ethan was suddenly beside her, his usual stoicism shattered. He crouched, hands hovering with uncertainty before gently touching her shoulder. Her skin was clammy, her breathing shallow. He didn't hesitate. The next hour moved in fragments. The elevator. His car. The rush of city lights blurred through tinted windows. A private clinic, all white walls and antiseptic quiet. Nurses moved efficiently, guided by Ethan's stern voice and an unspoken authority that cleared every hallway in their path. Mia drifted in and out. She heard someone say dehydration, low blood sugar, and then, more quietly, stress-induced exhaustion. Ethan stayed in the corner, arms crossed, jaw tight, but his eyes never left her. It wasn't until the doctor handed him a clipboard that things changed. She listed her emergency contact as the pediatric unit at St. Gabriel's, the doctor said. Ethan frowned. St. Gabriel's? The doctor nodded. Her son's file is linked. Liam Alvarez. He's in for ongoing cardiac treatment. Ethan didn't respond, but something inside him clearly did. When Mia woke, she was already in a recovery bed, hooked up to fluids, wrapped in warm blankets. A nurse offered a soft smile and a tray of food. She ate in silence, her hunger sudden and wild. She didn't ask how she got there. But when she returned to the office the next evening, something was different. A paper bag sat on her desk. Inside, a full meal. Not from the break room. From the chef's bistro 3 floors down. No name, no note. But she knew. The next day, the same. And the next. Then the hospital called. Her balance had cleared. $20,000, paid in full. No donor listed. No insurance miracle. She stood in Ethan's doorway that night, her hands clenched at her sides. He didn't look up from his desk. Why? She asked, her voice low. Why what? He replied, flipping a page. You know what? He met her gaze. Cool, unreadable. It wasn't me. Ethan, you're making assumptions. He turned back to his work, closing the conversation like a door slammed shut. But she saw the truth in his eyes. And more than that, she saw what he wasn't saying. He wasn't doing this for recognition. He wasn't doing it for gratitude. He had done it because something in him had shifted. That night, her to-do list was cut in half. The deadlines looser. The demands softened. A tray of food appeared every evening without fail. She wasn't praised. She wasn't thanked. But she was seen. For the first time, truly seen. And yet, beneath the surface of his silence, something else stirred. What Mia couldn't know, what he wouldn't admit, was that Ethan Vance wasn't just breaking routine. He was breaking, and he had no idea how to stop. The rain came down in sheets, loud against the office windows like an endless percussion. The city below disappeared beneath a curtain of water, headlights smearing across glass like streaks of paint. Inside Vance Corp's top floor, the usual sterile glow had dimmed. The storm had taken half the grid with it. Only emergency lights remained. Soft amber strips that cast long shadows and bathed the office in a quiet, golden hush. Mia sat at her desk, files untouched, her thoughts too scattered to focus. She glanced toward Ethan's office. His silhouette moved faintly behind the frosted glass. For once, he wasn't buried in paperwork. He was staring out at the rain, motionless. Another flicker, then silence. The hum of electronics died out completely. The building had lost its backup system. For a moment, everything stood still. Then his door creaked open. You all right? Ethan asked, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. She nodded. I've always liked storms. He walked in, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. The rigid CEO she'd met weeks ago seemed further away now, like a mask left behind. Most people don't, he said, easing into the chair across from her. I used to. Mia tilted her head. Used to? He hesitated. Before everything got too loud. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It hung there, fragile but welcome, like neither of them wanted to disturb it. Outside, the rain intensified, streaking down the windows in heavy torrents. My mom loves storms, Ethan continued, voice low. She said they made her feel small. In a good way. Like all the stress in her head didn't matter as much under a sky that wild. Mia smiled faintly. Sounds like she was wise. He looked at her then. Really looked. I lost her. Before I made it here. Before I became this. Mia didn't push. But he kept talking anyway. I bury myself in work. Told myself ambition was safer than emotion. But when you lock everything out, you forget how to let anything in. His voice faltered just a bit. Just enough. And your father? She asked gently. Ethan shook his head. Never met him. Left before I could walk. Maybe that's why I started running so early. Before anyone else could leave me too. Mia esse tro tightened. The space between them shrank, not physically, but emotionally. Like they were no longer two professionals stuck in an office, but two people finally stepping out from behind the versions of themselves they showed the world. She exhaled slowly. I was 20 when Liam was born. I worked 3 jobs, slept 4 hours, had no one to call. And every time he got sick, I thought, this is it. This is where it all falls apart. But it never did. I just kept moving. Ethan studied her. And now, I'm still moving, she said, eyes glistening, but I'm tired. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he reached for her hand without thinking. It wasn't calculated. It wasn't professional. It just was. Their fingers touched, lightly, unsure. Then came the glance. Not stolen, not forced. Just a moment that asked, "Can you see me now?" The air between them shifted. Time slowed. And then, he leaned in. It wasn't urgent. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. A kiss, soft and hesitant, somewhere between a question and an answer. When they pulled away, neither of them spoke. Because some truths don't need words. But as the power blinked back to life and the lights returned with a sudden glow, they both sat back, breathless, unsure. A line had been crossed, and neither of them knew if there was a way back. The apartment was still, save for the slow drip of the bathroom faucet. Outside, the sun hadn't yet risen, but Mia was already awake, standing barefoot on the cold tile floor, holding a sliver of plastic that now dictated the course of her life. 2 lines. Bold. Unmistakable. Positive. She didn't move. Didn't blink. Time seemed suspended between the inhale she forgot to release and the thoughts crashing over her like a tide. Her eyes stayed fixed on the test, as if staring long enough might change the answer. But it wouldn't. A life was growing inside her, and everything was about to change. She set the test on the counter with trembling fingers. Her reflection in the mirror stared back, wide-eyed, pale, overwhelmed. She didn't feel joy. Not yet. Just a heavy swirl of disbelief, anxiety, and something deeper. A quiet terror that this new beginning might be the very thing that ends everything she's fought to hold on to. Her job, her stability. Ethan. They'd never discussed what they were. Their kiss weeks ago had gone unspoken, hanging between them like a fragile secret neither dared name. Since then, things had softened. Slightly. He asked her how she was. Stayed later at the office. Watched her in the quiet moments. But feelings weren't facts. And affection wasn't a promise. What would he say? Would he accuse her of trying to trap him? Of leveraging weakness? She couldn't afford to lose this job. Not now. Not with Liam still needing checkups, still recovering. But hiding it wasn't an option either. That evening, she waited until the office thinned out, her fingers locked together as she stood outside Ethan's door. When she entered, he was reading through reports, tie loosened, brows furrowed. He looked up. Something wrong? Yes, she said softly. I need to talk to you. His expression barely changed. Talk. She stepped forward, each word pulled from the center of her chest. I am pregnant. The silence that followed wasn't dramatic. It was worse. It was flat, heavy, crushing. Ethan didn't move, didn't speak. She waited. Seconds stretched. Then, quietly, he set his pen down, closed the folder, stood, and walked past her. No words, no questions, no reaction. The door shut behind him, and Mia stood alone in that cold, perfect office, her stomach twisted so tightly she thought she might be sick. She blinked against the sting behind her eyes and left quickly, the sound of her heels swallowed by silence. The next day, he didn't speak to her, or the day after that. By the 4th day, the meals stopped arriving on her desk. Her workload returned to full capacity. The hallway glances were gone. The warmth had vanished as if it had never existed at all. She began packing her things on Friday evening. Quietly, methodically. She wouldn't beg. She wouldn't explain. Her son deserved better than uncertainty. As she folded her last document, the office door opened. She turned. Ethan stood there, rain-soaked and winded, as if he'd run the entire city to get there. His voice cracked. "Don't leave." She stared, frozen. "I wasn't avoiding you," he said, stepping forward. "I was trying to breathe." He looked at her then. Not as a CEO, not as a man avoiding responsibility, but as someone who'd been completely, utterly undone. "I've never had something worth protecting," he whispered, "until now." Mia's breath caught, but she didn't speak, because somewhere inside, she was still afraid. And even as he reached for her hand, the question remained. Would he stay, now that it was real? Or was this just another moment waiting to slip through her fingers? The apartment overlooked the skyline, glass walls framing the city like a moving painting. At night, it sparkled. In the morning, it glowed. And in the quiet spaces between, Mia still couldn't decide if it felt like home or something borrowed she might one day have to give back. The furnishings were elegant but understated, every detail purposeful. Ethan's assistant had arranged everything before Mia arrived. Stock pantry, plush linens, a sunlit corner for Liam's books and toys. It wasn't just generous. It was thoughtful. Too thoughtful. Some mornings, she'd wake in Egyptian cotton sheets and wonder if this was still her life. The Mia who once rationed breakfast cereal was now receiving prenatal massage appointments via text. Her medicine cabinet was lined with imported vitamins. Every Friday, a nurse came by to check in. Every Saturday, Ethan insisted she rest. And every time she tried to say no, he'd simply raise an eyebrow and say, "Let me." She never seen him like this. Not the cold, calculating man who read files like verdicts and expected the world to follow suit. No, this Ethan smiled more now. Sometimes he even laughed, low and rare, like a sound that had been locked away too long. He didn't talk about the pregnancy much, not in words. But he showed up, in the quietest, most consistent ways. Baby prep classes were scheduled before she could ask. A crib was delivered the day after she casually mentioned she hadn't thought that far ahead. She'd never known what it felt like to be cared for without strings. And that was the hardest part, because guilt trailed her like a shadow. She had built her life on survival, on pushing, stretching, grinding through every day just to make it to the next. But now, she was being looked after, not out of obligation, but because someone wanted to. Some nights, she'd lie awake wondering what he truly expected in return. Other nights, she'd simply cry and hope he never asked. It was Liam who pulled her out of her own mind. He adjusted to the new space with the easy resilience of children who are used to sudden change. He filled the apartment with giggles and toy cars, bedtime questions, and drawings taped to the fridge. And he adored Ethan. At first, he called him Mr. Vance. Polite, curious, cautious. Then it became Ethan, usually said with a smile, sometimes with a tug on his sleeve. And then one evening, as they were coming back from the grocery store, it happened. Ethan had unlocked the door, arms full of bags, when Liam ran ahead, skidded into the entryway, and turned back with a grin. "Dad, wait up." Mia froze mid-step, keys still dangling in her hand. So did Ethan. For a heartbeat, the entire world went silent. Then Ethan looked down at the boy. This small, bright-eyed child who didn't understand boundaries the way adults did, who simply named what he felt, and smiled. He didn't correct him. He didn't pause. He just reached down, lifted Liam into his arms, and said, "Next time, you carry the heavy stuff." Liam giggled, throwing his arms around his neck. Mia stood behind them, breath caught in her throat. She should have stopped it, should have clarified, explained, apologized for the slip. But she didn't. Because watching them, this man who once intimidated her more than anyone, and this child who had never known what it felt like to be chosen, she realized something terrifying. Maybe she wasn't afraid of losing control. Maybe for the first time, she was afraid of getting used to being loved. The rooftop garden felt like another world. Above the city, The noise softened to a distant hum. Strings of warm lights draped between wooden beams flickered gently in the evening breeze. The scent of lavender and jasmine wafted from planted beds, and the sky stretched wide, painted in strokes of orange, rose, and gold. Mia sat on a cushioned bench, hands resting lightly on her rounded belly. She was further along now, the child within her making gentle shifts and flutters beneath her palm. The quiet moments had become her favorite. In them, she could feel everything. The past she'd fought through, the present she was still learning to trust, and the uncertain future she no longer feared quite as much. Beside her, Ethan sat, unusually still. His suit jacket lay folded over the bench arm. His shirt sleeves were rolled, and for once he looked utterly relaxed. Not like a man running an empire, but like someone discovering what it meant to simply be here. Liam darted between planter boxes, his laughter echoing like sunlight. He wore a superhero cape made from a dish towel and carried a plastic sword he refused to put down. He was safe, happy, whole. Mia turned slightly. "You've been quiet." Ethan glanced at her, then down at the small velvet box in his hand. Her heart skipped. "I've been thinking," he said slowly, as if each word needed space to breathe. "About what this is. About what we're building." He opened the box. Not with flair, not with ceremony, but with calm certainty. Inside was a ring. Simple. No diamonds. No sparkle. Just a silver band with an engraving along the inside. Us. Always. Mia blinked, stunned. Her lips parted, but no sound came. "It's not a proposal," Ethan said gently. "Not in the traditional sense." She looked up, searching his face. "It's not about marriage," he continued. "It's about a promise. That I'm not going anywhere. That I'll be there for this child. For Liam. For you." Her breath hitched. "You saved your son alone," he said, voice lower now. "No one showed up for you." "Not really. But I want to. I choose to. Not because I have to, but because I want this to be more than a chapter for us. I want it to be a life." Mia's hands trembled as she reached for the ring. Her fingers brushed the cool metal. It was real, solid, steady, just like the man offering it. She tried to speak, but the emotion caught in her throat. Her eyes brimmed, and a tear slipped down before she could stop it. All her life, she'd been the one holding things together. For Liam, for herself. But in this moment, on a rooftop bathed in sunset, someone else was holding her without saying a word. "I don't need a wedding," she whispered. "But this means everything." Ethan reached out, gently sliding the ring onto her finger. Below them, the city lights began to blink awake. Above, the sky melted into twilight. Liam ran over, breathless, cape fluttering behind him. He climbed into Ethan's lap without hesitation, curling there like he'd always belonged. And he had. Mia leaned against Ethan's shoulder, her fingers wrapped around his, the cool silver of the ring pressing against his skin. They didn't need to say it. They were a family now. And sometimes, love doesn't arrive with grand declarations or perfect timing. Sometimes, it just stays. And for Mia, that was the promise she never dared to hope for. Until now. If you enjoyed this story, ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing, heartfelt stories like this. Also, let us know where you are watching from, and drop your thoughts in the comments. What did you think about Mia's quiet strength, Ethan's transformation, and little Liam's innocent love that tied it all together? Did the rooftop promise move you as much as it did us? Should Ethan and Mia take the next step? We'd love to hear your take on their journey from strangers to a family. Don't forget, your engagement helps us bring more stories like this to life.